Hello, class. This is Demetrius Wilson again with Business 100. We're now on to Chapter 2, Business Ethics and Social Responsibility, something that's come to the forefront in the last 10 years and is very important, very prevalent. A lot of times way back in the day, 10, 20 years ago, people simply ignored white-collar crimes, and they felt that they were victimless crimes, but they definitely weren't. So it's great that people have brought such a spotlight and such attention to this. Has it wiped out all white-collar crime and things that happen that violate business ethics and responsibility, social responsibility? Absolutely not. But it's done a great job of putting a good focus on it and seeing what we can do in the business community to kind of stamp that out. Enron, I'm sure all of you guys have, well, maybe not all of you have heard of Enron, but if you haven't, you'll learn now. So Enron, the executives there, it was an energy company. They admitted to accounting practices that concocted to overstate the company's income in a period of 4 years. So you might say, well, why would someone overstate their income? Because I have investors, and investors will say, hey, well, if you seem like you made a lot of money, then I'll invest in your company. So I'm going to overstate my income. And then, companies do that. They cook the books and they make things seem as if things are going one way, but they're really not. So they're just getting people to invest money. But if they knew how the books really looked, they probably wouldn't have invested that money, or I'm sure they wouldn't have invested that money. In the wake of the company's collapse, stock prices plummeted from $90, right? So $90 a share. It cost you $90 per share for a share of Enron stock to $1. That, is absolutely, people will walk on the street and wouldn't pick it up off the ground. A share, inflicting massive financial losses on the investment community. So people in the community that, are investors, shareholders, and which are also stakeholders in the company, they lost a lot of money with Enron. But possibly even worse, thousands of employees lost not only their jobs but their retirement funds as well. And I know they were speaking about a couple that worked there, and I guess the couple had like a couple million in their 401k, and they were going to get an RV and just drive across the United States for the rest of their lives, and just live happily ever after. And then all of this happened. And what people don't think about is like, well, if your company evaporates into thin air and you have a 401k with that company, what happens to your 401k? Oh, it evaporates as well. And so these people had to go back to work, and it basically ruined their lives, or at least ruin their retirement. So I'm not saying everybody, flush your 401k down the toilet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, sometimes you have to think about these things. A lot of people, they just, they knew Enron was a great, stable, and solid company, but that just was not the case. Another terrible example, and that's basically what we're doing in this short PowerPoint presentation, is going over some terrible examples and some things having to do with business ethics, so you kind of get a grasp of what's what in terms of what we're referring to, how some of these laws came about. I think I have a video in there about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. All of these things, specifically, almost specifically Enron, that's what the result of these things was the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Delphia, I don't know if you remember Delphia Cable, but the CEO, John, he had treated the publicly owned firm as a personal piggy bank, siphoning off billions of dollars to support his family's extravagant lifestyle and bankrupting the company in the process. And he's in jail right now along with his son. It's terrible that you're committing these crimes, but you're also taking your son along, for the ride as well. And what was even worse, it was like a whole community in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, that this whole community, they all, worked for Adelphia. It was just like one of those towns, like, hey, that town is just Adelphia town. And, you just, not only did you ruin your life, ruin your son's life, but you ruined, entire towns, entire communities' lives. Tyco, Dennis, he purchased a $30 million estate in Florida. That was all company money, and a $7 million Park Avenue apartment, right? So not only was he not satisfied with his $30 million estate in Florida, but he also had to have a $7 million apartment on Park Avenue. Eventually drained the company for $600 million. A lot of times these people, they have, the access and ability to get funds that other people would not normally be able to utilize, and they take advantage of it. Bernie Madoff, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Bernie Madoff, and he, probably makes these other three or other two look like, chump change compared to what he was doing. Madoff, he convinced investors to give him large sums of money. In return, he gave them impressive 8 to 12% return in a year. And now think about that. If you invested your money and somebody gave you 8 to 12% return on what you invested, yeah, I'd be good with that too. But the thing is that, well, where was he getting that money from? He never really invested their money. Instead, he kept it for himself, right? Just take your money and spend it. He got the funds to pay the first investors their return, right, if they ask for it, by bringing in new investors. So I'm not paying you off of the money that you invested. I'm paying you off of the money that Joe Schmo just brought in, right? And then I'm paying Joe Schmo off of the money that the next guy brings in. Everything was going smoothly until the fall of 2008, right? That's when the stock market, has some trouble, plummeted. Many of investors asked for their money back, so the jig was up, and that's when he got convicted and went to jail. One funny thing I always, I guess it's not funny. It's funny to me, but maybe not funny to the New York Mets. It's funny they have this day. It's called Bobby Bonilla Day, and you can look it up. And it's a guy who used to play for the Mets, but the Mets were involved, and they went in, and Bernie Madoff convinced them, like, hey, this is a great way to invest your money. And so they told Bobby Bonilla, they said, hey, I think it was about $6 million we owe you. Can we defer it, and then we'll pay you some payments and installments at a later date? And he said, yeah. And so now this guy who hasn't played baseball in years gets like $1.16 million on the same day every year up until 2033. And you can look it up. It's called Bobby Bonilla Day. And everybody in the sports world laughs about it because every day on that day he gets a check from the Mets for $1.16 million. Business ethics, and that's what we're talking about, business ethics and social responsibility. Business ethics is an application of ethical behavior in a business, right? No surprise. It's just ethics, but relative to business. It's not, are you doing something that's legal? It's, are you doing the right thing? We all know what the right thing is, right? Just because something is not written specifically in a law book, right? That doesn't mean that it's not, that it's not something that you should do, right? You know what's right or wrong. You get your spidey senses, give you that feeling when you're doing something that is wrong. Acting ethically in business means more than simply obeying applicable laws and regulations, just like I just said. That's the starting point, is obeying the laws. But what you want to do is actually do what's right. Corporate social responsibility deals with the actions that affect a variety of parties in a company's environment. So I want to tell you a distinct difference between two words and two definitions. So in general business and all throughout your business classes that you take, there's a difference between a stakeholder and a shareholder. Now, a shareholder is a stakeholder, but a stakeholder is not necessarily a shareholder, but let me explain. A shareholder is someone who has invested money in the company and they own a share. And if they sold that share back, they would get some money. And for the time, if they're not selling it back, they're holding on to it and the share is worth this amount of money. Stakeholder is anybody who is affected by the business dealings of the company. So obviously a shareholder is a stakeholder. But people who work for the company, even if they don't own stock, they're stakeholders. People in the community that live near the business, they're stakeholders, because what if the business leaves and then it's abandoned building and then that brings down property value and everything else that goes along with that. People, your spouse, you work for the company and your spouse, is married to you, right? Your spouse is a stakeholder, your family is a stakeholder. Everybody affected by the company is a stakeholder. A socially responsible company shows concern for its stakeholders, right? So that's everybody. It's the people who work for them. It's the people who are their shareholders. It's everybody who, even their suppliers. Anyone who, like owners, employees, customers, and the communities in which it does business has a stake, in, henceforth the word stakeholders or interests in it. If you're running an ethical organization, right, there's certain things that are consistent with organization. So if I have organization ABC, you have organization XYZ, they both would have these same traits. We would treat employees, customers, investors, and the public fairly, right? We would treat people fair. We would make fairness a top priority. We wouldn't say just, hey, suck it up and get over it. We would hold every member personally accountable for his or her actions. That's a big thing. We would communicate core values and principles to all members. We would say, hey, this is our core. This is what we believe in, and so let's continue to focus on that. And they would demand and reward integrity from all members in all situations, right? So you want to make sure that all of your members are doing the right thing, not just the people at the bottom of the totem pole, but the people at the very top as well. And not just when people aren't looking, when people are looking, but just when they're looking as well. Employees in unethical organizations also have some things in common. So if I'm running unethical corporation ABC and you're running unethical corporation XYZ, we would have these things in common. So people would consistently feel uneasy about the work that they do. They would object to the way they're treated, right? If these things start ringing a bell, maybe you're not in the right type of company. They're uncomfortable about the way coworkers are treated, right? You see people treated a certain way, and you say, that's I don't really like that. And I've been in that situation before. And they question the appropriateness of management directives and policies, right? So if your manager is doing certain things, and you could follow suit and do the same thing that he does, or you could just say, that doesn't look ethical, that doesn't look right, and he doesn't look like somebody who I really want to follow. All right, so that's it. Like I said, we're going to keep these short. But these are some things that will help you on your quizzes, right? Things that will help you understand the concepts. Just want to, have a brief overview. All of the topic is right there in your module. So everything from chapter 2 is there. So there'll never be anything on a quiz that's not right there in the textbook, which you should be reading. And you should also be, ensuring that you're watching this lecture. So if you're hearing me now, you watch the lecture, so you're good to go. And just know that, a lot of tips and keys and cues that I'll be providing for the quizzes and for the tests will be in the general lecture. So that's it. That's it for Chapter 2. So for those of you who have Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 in the first week, that will be it for your first week. Make sure that you complete your assignment. Make sure that you complete your quizzes. And make sure that you also watch those supplemental videos. Those supplemental videos in there are great videos, and they have great content, and they're relative to what you're doing. Sometimes some people learn, through just reading. Some people learn better through watching videos that are relative. So I like to provide those to the students as well, and give you kind of a comprehensive learning experience. Well, that's it for Chapter 2. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me. But other than that, hope you guys all have a good day and a great week.